The Earth is known as the water planet. Some 2/3 of the Earth's surface is covered with water. How much water do you suppose there is altogether? Actually, there are about 1.38 billion cubic kilometers of water on the Earth. 97.5%, or about 1.35 billion cubic kilometers of which is contained in the oceans. The remaining 2.5%, about 35 million cubic kilometers, is in the form of fresh water, on land surfaces and in the atmosphere. 70% of this fresh water is located at the North and South Poles, in the form of ice and snow, while most of the rest of it is groundwater, located 800 meters down in the Earth. The only water that is available for use by humans, plants, and animals is surface groundwater and the water in marshes, lakes, and rivers, a mere 0.3% of total water reserves on the Earth. If we say, for example, that all of the fresh and salt water on the Earth is equivalent to 4 1-liter bottles, then the fresh water available for use by plants and animals on the land would amount to no more than about 1 teaspoonful. Although this amount of water will remain the same regardless of how many thousand or 10,000 years may pass, the world's population, which began to surge at around the end of the 18th century, is estimated to reach 8.5 billion by 2025. If we do not take action, we will inevitably be faced with critical shortages of the water that we need. Human life starts within the amniotic fluid in our mother's body. We are conceived in and are nurtured by this miraculous liquid. Even though we are terrestrial creatures born on the land, 80% of the bodies of infants and children and 60% of the bodies of adults is made up of water. Human life is made possible by the life-giving qualities of water. Without water, humans, animals, and plants would become emaciated and feeble within a number of weeks and would eventually die. Water is thus the fountainhead of life for all living beings. Water alone, though, is not sufficient to maintain our lives. We are also dependent on food, the staff of life, to energize us with vitality. Food, too, is brought to fruition by the power of water. Thus, without water, we would also be deprived of food. Water also has the power to purify. Water cleanses our bodies, removes the soil from our food and clothing, and endows us with the ability to lead our daily lives in good health. Pure water continues to promote our health. In the developing countries, even today, as many as 25 million people die annually due to the pathogenic bacteria and contaminants found in polluted water. Water not only nurtures healthy bodies, but also heals our souls. It also holds the secret power to foster bountiful spirits and enrich sensitivity. A good example of this is the traditional Japanese garden pond. Lakes, marshes, and mountain valleys give contentment to many people as places for rest and relaxation. In addition, hot springs have been consoling the hearts and bodies of people, young and old alike, since long in the past. Water is the birthplace of the body and soul. The power of water has furthermore been of benefit to us in our work and has bolstered our courage since ancient times. Water wheels have continued to help humanity for hundreds of years. Even today, the force of water generates electricity and continues to support us in our everyday lives. Water is thus the source of life. It nurtures our food. It fosters the creation of bountiful spirits and purifies and heals us in mind and body. How then are we treating water in exchange for these blessings? It was during the 1960s that the Japanese economy first began to attract the attention of the world. By 1968, Japan had developed into the second largest economy in the world in GNP. Along with economic development, the population began concentrating in the cities, and both industrialization and urbanization advanced at a vigorous pace. As economic development continued to move ahead smoothly, the development of water resources also advanced, along with housing, roadways, electricity, natural gas, and so forth. In the past, it was difficult to assure a supply of water that was safe and pure. Limited water supplies, pumped up from underground in wells and carried into the home, provided for all the needs for the day, from drinking water to water for domestic use. These days, however, in the cities and in the rural areas, just turning on the faucet makes it possible for us to make unrestricted use of as much pure, safe water as we require, anytime we want. The total quantity of water used in one day currently in Japan for washing one's face and brushing one's teeth in the morning, for cooking, laundry, flushing the toilet, cleaning, bathing, and so forth, amounts to about 350 liters. This equivalent to 35 bucketfuls of the 10-liter bucket used in the old days. However, since water supplies are not yet widely spread in the developing nations of Asia, it is necessary to haul water home from springs, wells, groundwater sources, or nearby rivers. There are also broad discrepancies in the quantity of water consumed for domestic use. In some countries, people use as much as 300 liters per day, while people in other regions may only be able to use 20 liters per day. Countries with advanced industrialization and urbanization have brought prosperity to their citizens. However, the developed industrialized countries where any amount of water has been available for use anywhere at any time are now faced with a serious dilemma that could be thought of as repayment for prosperity. The most serious issue is water contamination. In Japan, various contaminants are discharged into the rivers and lakes that serve as the sources of water supplies due to the intensification of industry and the diversification of lifestyles. The first cause of contamination is the discharge into the rivers and lakes of the synthetic detergents used in virtually all households, detergents and soaps used in the kitchen for hair washing and bathing, cooking additives, and various other contaminants. This shows the development of public sewer systems in areas of population concentration in Japan. Though it has reached a level of almost 70% in those areas, development still lags behind in rural areas, and over the entire nation, the rate is no more than 42%. The second source of contamination is household refuse and industrial waste. As life becomes more prosperous, there is an enormous increase both in the quantity of refuse that is generated in the household and the quantity of industrial waste. Dry cleaning fluid, tetrachloroethylene, trichloroethylene, and other solvents used in high-tech industries and so forth penetrate from the location of disposal into the groundwater and flow in the lakes and rivers, thereby broadening the range of contamination. The third source of contamination is pollution due to unbridled development. Forests are cut down, high-speed expressways are constructed, tourist and leisure facilities, golf courses, and so forth are being established one after the other. Insecticides, Bactericides, herbicides, and other agricultural chemicals used to maintain golf course greens penetrate into the groundwater and flow away in nearby streams as red-tinted water. The contaminating component of foods that are discarded in tourist areas and resorts is broken down by rain, seeps into the ground, and flows into rivers, thereby polluting the rivers and lakes. The fourth cause of contamination is atmospheric pollution. The sulfur and nitrogen oxides discharged by vast numbers of automobiles rise into the atmosphere and fall as acid rain, snow, and fog, pollute the land and plant life, and eventually flow into the rivers. Acid rain falls over the entire land surface of the islands of Japan, and, as in Northern Europe, the US, and Canada, causes the pH to increase to a value of 4.5. This value tends to weaken the process of photosynthesis in plants and has a strong impact on all forms of aquatic life, from microorganisms to fish. Since the amount of rainfall in Japan is almost 3 times that of Northern Europe, though, there has been no great damage yet. Even so, it does threaten to deteriorate the quality of the water. The fifth cause of contamination is pollution due to agricultural chemicals and chemical fertilizers. In contrast to the concentration of population in the cities, the rural population, which shoulders the responsibility for the production of food, continues to decline year after year, and the number of farm workers has now dropped to a mere 4.8% of the total population. With this decline in the rural population, efforts have been to convert agriculture from labor-intensive to highly productive. In order to stabilize rice production in particular, agriculture has been made highly productive in a way that could be referred to as the industrialization of agriculture, typified by the redevelopment of agricultural land, the introduction of large-scale machinery, and the utilization of large quantities of chemical fertilizers and agricultural chemicals. The dispersal of agricultural chemicals in rice fields has also become broader in scale. A large portion of the agricultural chemicals that are used becomes combined with water, polluting the soil and rivers. Furthermore, DDT, BHC, Smithian, and other components of agricultural chemicals are converted to a gas when the temperature rises, pollute the atmosphere, and fall extensively as agricultural chemical rain. During the past 50 years, Japan was strongly committed to the achievement of economic development and prosperity. As a consequence, we cannot help but feel that water is now retaliating with a vengeance. Water continues to bestow incalculable blessings on us. It quenches our thirst and assures the production of food. That assurance, however, will not necessarily continue on forever. Rice production in Japan requires the support of an abundance of water, and even today, we are able to secure a 100% supply of rice, our staple food. Irrigation systems have been completely developed in rice-growing areas, and water has always been supplied, in just the amounts needed, by the canals that crisscross throughout these areas. It is said that 1,000 tons of water are needed to produce just 1 ton of rice. The Japanese government over the generations has provided priority water rights for the production of rice, the staple crop. Agricultural water in Japan used to mean water for use in rice fields. Increased sophistication in agriculture now makes it possible for us to produce vegetables, livestock, fruit, and so forth, regardless of the season, and these too require large quantities of water. Japanese agriculture, however, is now being confronted by a serious threat. That threat is the critical shortage of water that has been occurring during the summer months. Along with the increase in population due to industrialization and urbanization, water for domestic use has also increased. And due to a number of amendments of laws dealing with agricultural water rights, the flow of water is gradually being diverted to the cities. This indicates the transitions in the quantity of domestic water usage. It can be clearly seen that the demand for water has intensified year after year. However, since 1980, there has been a gradual decline in the amount of precipitation in the form of rain and snow over the Japanese islands. This illustrates the seasonal change in annual rainfall since 1945. The phenomenon of low rainfall has continued since 1960. Even dams on the upper reaches of rivers are not able to store sufficient water. And especially during the summer months, there are some dams in which the stored water does not even reach 50% capacity. The same can be said of the 5 lakes located at the foot of Mount Fuji, Japan's highest mountain. In addition to a drop in the water table, low levels of rainfall have exposed the bottoms of some of the lakes. If action is not taken, agricultural water in Japan will also be faced with a crisis situation. How about the condition of drinking water then? Do you suppose that it is safe? In the past in Japan, groundwater was used as the source of drinking water. Currently, however, piped water supplies account for a total of 95.3%, and virtually everyone uses these as the source of drinking water. Rivers, marshes, and lakes are currently the major source of water in Japan, accounting for 69.4% of the total, while groundwater is the source of only 27.8%. The balance of 2.8% is spring water and other sources. A major change is now taking place in the nearly 70% of the water that derives from lakes, marshes, and rivers. That change is the progressive contamination of raw water that is caused by domestic discharges, agricultural chemicals, and other substances. Powerful chlorine sterilization is required to assure that this drinking water is safe. In Japan, residual chlorine in water supplies is set at a minimum of 0.1 milligrams per liter of water. Since there is no upper limit though, in Tokyo, for example, it has been fluctuating in the range of 3 to 5 times that amount. Chlorine combines with organic matter in raw water and generates a carcinogenic substance known as trihalomethane. In addition, it has been shown that accumulations of this substance in the body can cause damage to the central nervous system and to the genes. In the past, water supplies in Japan had a wide reputation around the world for providing delicious water. Currently, however, the water in most cities has a bad odor and taste, and water purifiers are being used increasingly in households. Furthermore, mineral water and other types of drinking water packaged in plastic and glass bottles is now being sold in large quantities. And water is even being imported from abroad. There used to be places everywhere in Japan where you could just scoop spring water up in your hand and drink it. This was true even of small streams. So, how is this going to affect the lives of the plants and animals that are not able to purchase or drink safe drinking water? This is a serious injustice that we have committed. Perhaps it could even be said that water is revolting against us. How are we to make amends for this crime? The population of Asia currently stands at 3,603,760,000. It moreover continues to climb steadily year after year and will increase to 4,960,000,000 by 2025. By 2050, it is expected to reach 5,740,000,000. However, though the population continues to grow, there will be no change in the quantity of water. The amount of available water supplies is fixed, nor is water a resource that can be replaced by something else. Even if there are new sources of water that become available for development in the future, the world's population in 50 years will reach as high as 10 billion. And moreover, that population will be overly concentrated in just certain regions. It will be almost impossible to supply 10 billion people with water equivalent in quality to that enjoyed by the developed countries. There is no doubt that securing water sources in Asia in particular will become an issue of critical importance. Are we perhaps needlessly wasting the limited water that we have? Are we making adequate efforts to recycle water? Incapable of restraining population growth, we dam up the rivers and pipe out the water, pump up vast quantities of water from underground, contaminate the soil and cause salt damage in order to secure drinking water and produce our food. We have manipulated and controlled the water as it suits us humans, without regard for other living beings. Aren't we perhaps being somewhat presumptuous? Although agriculture in Japan promotes production based on the idea of massive fertilizer, large production, and bountiful harvests, nitrogen-based fertilizers in particular destroy the soil and contaminate groundwater, which then in turn damages human health. There are reports clearly indicating this. In India, Pakistan, and other countries, salt is filtering into agricultural land due to the excessive pumping of groundwater, as well as leakage. Much of this farmland, extending out like broad fields of salt, has been abandoned. What are we likely to do next? Will we perhaps fight one another in struggles over water? It is feared that, in the 21st century, there will be a shift from struggles over petroleum resources to fighting over water. Actually, those struggles have already begun. City against city, industry against agriculture, nation against nation. Fighting over water is already underway, with the strong grabbing the water away from the weak. There are billions of lives living in coexistence on the surface of the Earth, the water planet. Water is the irreplaceable treasure of this entire earthbound family. We all must agree to share it equally. That water is now in critical condition. The boundless selfish desires of humanity have brought us to this predicament. Water once sparkled and throbbed with life and vitality, and it is to water that all living beings owe their very existence. We have forgotten the blessings of water and no longer have a spirit of gratitude towards nature.